Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. I'm your host, the Real Gerald Quinn. We're at the almost down. We're at almost the end of January. On a recording this, of course, on a Tuesday, the 30th of January, 2024. As we come close to the end, frankly, of the football season, really the last, Championship Sunday is really like the last real Sunday of NFL football. Like the Super Bowl is an all-day event, its own entity. The game's not till 6 o'clock. So Sunday certainly is, a sad day for millions upon millions of football fans, even though you still have the Super Bowl left and you got to wait 2 weeks. And it was an excellent day, to be honest with you, of football. Two very, very highly competitive games, two different games, two devastating losses for the teams, I don't want to say losers, but for the losing parties. And the veteran teams came out on top. That's going to be our theme. They wasn't ready. I think that perfectly fits both teams that lost. We'll begin with the Baltimore-Kansas City game, which to me by far was the more compelling game because these were two teams that I thought, frankly, the winner of this game was going to win the Super Bowl, and I still think that way. And I can give you my predictions for the Super Bowl early. I'll go into detail more, probably on next week's broadcast in terms of the Super Bowl matchup. But this was a classic game of young, upstarting team who hadn't really been there. I think we, don't get Baltimore's history confused with the fact that this was Lamar Jackson's first championship game, and for a number of these players, they hadn't been in a conference championship game. Remember, Baltimore, they had some lean years, a couple lean years in the past decade. So they hadn't been in a conference championship game since 2012. Now, I know that's hard to believe, but that's well over a decade ago. So it had been a minute before they had been at this point. And it frankly showed. They absolutely played right into Kansas City's hands in this game. Kansas City, I told you, Kansas City, if you're Baltimore, you needed to run the ball down Kansas City's throat. Buffalo almost had 200 yards of rushing last week, and Buffalo's not even a great running team. Like they're not near as good as running team as Baltimore. Baltimore was the best rushing team in the league this year, but for whatever reason, they run the ball only 16 times and were held to 81 yards. Now they didn't have the ball a long time. Kansas City dominated time of possession, 37-22, but even still, 16 carries to 37 passes. The game was within. I know Kansas City was up 17-7, but this game was, for the most part, a one-score game for the majority of the game. 17-10, 14-7. This was this game was close enough to where you have to stick with the run. I said this last week. The matchup between Kansas City's secondary and Baltimore's receivers is frankly a mismatch. Kansas City has one of the best secondaries in the league. McDuffie is an all-pro. You saw what Snead made the biggest play in the game with the forced fumble on Zay Flowers. Reed, they have talent up and down the board in that secondary. They have a great, great secondary, period. That was not the way to go. Even with getting Mark Andrews back, who hadn't played, and get him back, he hadn't played in 10 weeks. They were just happy to have him back on the field. So the game plan, the way to go was running the football. And I think sometimes, I'm not going to get caught up in the narrative of, they were trying to prove something with Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson now is a pure pocket passer. I don't buy that. I don't think this was a matter of trying to show off Lamar Jackson. I just think that you can just outsmart yourself, outthink yourself, and just get away from. You can panic. Like sometimes these offensive coordinators do stuff that that frankly just doesn't make sense. And I'm gonna tell you right now, that game plan is getting criticized, and rightfully so, because you have a power running game, and look at and listen, we knew Kansas City was going to contain Lamar Jackson, and then mind you, they had there was no Willie Gay in the game, who is the quarterback of the Kansas City defense, who was supposed to be the spy on Lamar Jackson. And it really limited Lamar Jackson's running by not using the running backs. Because if they have to pay attention to your running backs, then that could open up things for Lamar Jackson. So instead of just 8 carries for 54 yards, maybe that's 8 carries for 90 yards. Or 11 carries for 100 possibly. I told you, Kansas City was probably Kansas City did exactly what I told you they were going to do. But they did it with a lot of help. I said they probably will take away the run and make Lamar Jackson the pocket passer, which is what they want to do. But they got a lot of help from Baltimore with that. And you see with Kansas City, and I said this, that Lamar Jackson and Baltimore would have to be perfect. People, you hear that and you say, well, what are you talking about? Baltimore was dominant this season. Kansas City, this is the worst version of a Kansas City team that we've seen in the Andy Reid, the Patrick Mahomes era. Why does Baltimore have to be perfect? And what does that even mean? Well, what it means is no turnovers, no dumb penalties, no horrible play calling. That's what it means. Can't shoot yourself in the foot. And this is where Kansas City is at right now. I'll get to Kansas City in a second. But Baltimore in that game, Baltimore was tight as a drum. They showed they were wet behind the ears. They showed that they hadn't been competing at a championship level for a minute now, basically since the Ray Lewis days. That they hadn't been at that level. 2019, they got put out, in the divisional game. They lost to Buffalo a couple of years ago in the wild card game, so they really consistently have not been at this level for a while now, on a year in year out basis. Not like San Francisco has. Like San Francisco has been at a championship level for basically the last 5 years, with the four conference championship appearances in 5 years, and now second Super Bowl appearance in 5 years. That hasn't been the case with Baltimore, and it absolutely showed in this game. Kansas City came out right away, hit them in the mouth. Hit them right in the mouth. And, Lamar Jackson didn't play well. It's just that simple. He did not play well. The turnovers, now the strip sack, again, that's pocket. That is experience. That's pocket presence. He will get big like that. That won't happen in future years, because he has taken a major step as a pocket passer this year. He took a big step as a pocket passer this year, and took a step, and he's headed in the right direction from that standpoint. But that's experience. Like, a guy shouldn't be able to come around the corner like that and strip the ball. Like, you held the ball too long. The interception was inexcusable. You have to at least get 3 points there to make it a 17-10 game. Put pressure on Kansas City. Make Kansas City make plays to put that game away. Now, they end up doing it anyway, but that interception was that you can't throw that ball in triple coverage. You can't. You just can't make this play. You cannot make that play in a championship game. Again, his first championship game. He's not the first quarterback to get to be at this level to have to have to like seemingly wait his turn. John Elway, Peyton Manning both went through the same thing. They both went through the same thing. Elway, Terry Bradshaw a long time ago called John Elway a loser. It might be on video somewhere. You can look it up on YouTube. It's somewhere it's documented, but that was his exact words. John Elway is a loser. Called him a loser, which was, insane. Even at the time. This is after the Super Bowl losses. Like Elway drug Denver to the Super Bowl 3 times with teams that had no business making it to the Super Bowl. Look at some of those teams. Nice teams, but 3 like back to back. Yeah, like this. He was the furthest thing from being a loser. Like the guy was an all-time great. Even then, even when he wasn't winning Super Bowls, the guy was an all-time great to me. The way anybody that watched Elway. Peyton Manning couldn't beat New England. Couldn't get through the AFC. He had a ton of playoff misfortunes. We documented his record in his first 9 playoff games last week. He was like 3-6. Couldn't beat the Patriots at first. Up until 2006 season, when they had that great second half comeback. So Lamar Jackson's not the first to not be able to knock down the door. And good news for Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, he's only 27 years old. Like I said earlier, he took a major step in the right direction. Lamar Jackson has to become an elite pocket passer in order for him to go to the next level. I'm not saying he has to become a statue and stand in the pocket and not use his legs judiciously, just like Patrick Mahomes does. But, he has to, in order for him to get to that next level, he has to be able to manipulate defensive players from the pocket. He has to be able to dissect defenses from the pocket. He has to be the pocket presence, stepping movement in the pocket. All that has to happen for Lamar Jackson to get to the next level. Any great quarterback, any all-time great quarterback has those intangibles in the pocket. All of them have that. So they're like, I'm not trying to take away from. We're not trying to curtail his athleticism. Not sit up there and say, no, Lamar, don't run. Just stand there and get the shit kicked out of you in the pocket and take hits. No. He's got to make play like that. That game plan was not about. I think that game plan was not about their offense or their trying to prove that he can throw from the pocket. I don't think that was it. It was about that at all. But with that being said, he has to develop into a top pocket passer in order for them to win a championship. Because defensively, Baltimore held Kansas City scoreless in the second half. Kansas City had 123 yards on 5 punts in the second half. They did nothing in the second half outside that last drive, which of course clinched the game with them being able to run out the clock. The Ravens defense was dominant in the second half. Just they controlled the whole, controlled the game in the second half with their defense. Kansas City was struggling to I don't think Kansas City crossed midfield up until that last drive. So their defense wasn't the problem whatsoever. You hold the team scoreless in the second half. You've done your job. As far as Kansas City goes, I didn't see this coming. Well, first of all, in terms of Patrick Mahomes, he's gotten to a level to where he can dominate, he can control the game without dominating the game. It's a very rare level that athletes get to, You saw it with Jordan. You saw it with like a Gretzky, a Lemieux, Sidney Crosby, my hockey fans. You see it, you see it with Barry Bonds walking, not like, doesn't he have to hit a home run? If he's on base walking because you're scared to pitch to him, that, puts pressure on your pitcher and gets other guys great pitches to hit. You see it, and you saw it, of course, with the all-time greats in basketball. You see with LeBron James, of recent up note, Steph Curry. That's the level that he's reached now at this point. Look at his stats in this game. They were fine. He completed his first 11 passes, set the tone for the entire game. But you look at Mahomes' stats for this game. It wasn't about the yards. It wasn't about the yards. He didn't throw for a bunch of yards. He had one touchdown pass. Okay, he had one touchdown pass. He controlled this game, 30 of 39, one touchdown pass, 241 yards. No turnovers. No turnovers. Okay. They were, despite the fact that they only scored 17 points, they were 8 for 18 on third downs. Total third downs and fourth down conversions, they were 9 for 20. Basically just under 50%, and converted the ones that they needed to convert. So his ability to manage the football game, I'm glad I'm using that word for a reason, because it became with Cam Newton's comments in the last couple of months, in the last month, about when he was describing Brock Purdy and Brock Purdy, along with Tua Tagovailoa and Dak Prescott, calling them game managers. It took on seemingly this negative connotation, and you don't become a top quarterback in the NFL without managing the game, at a high level, because those mistakes that Lamar Jackson made, trust me, if you're a coach of Baltimore, you wish that he would have managed the game better. Okay. His command of that game, especially in the second half, when one mistake could have been the difference between winning and losing, was in essence the difference in that game. Along with, of course, Kansas City's defense was all over Lamar Jackson the entire game. But there were moments where one turnover and that game turns the other way. That game could have easily turned in Baltimore's direction. All it took is one mistake from Mahomes. He never made it. One misread, a fumble, a penalty. It never happened. It never happened. And that is the importance of managing the football game. And that is at the level that he's at. He controlled the entire game without throwing for 400 yards, without throwing for 5 touchdowns, without dominating from a statistical standpoint. And it kind of reminded me of LeBron's performance in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals back in 2018, when they played, the baby Celtics, I like to call them, with Tatum as a rookie and Jaylen Brown was in his second year. Marcus Smart was still young. They had a couple of veteran players. This is one where Kyrie, of course, didn't show up because he knew what was going to happen in that particular game, in that Game 7. And, Boston, fought, kept the game close, but LeBron James was at that point in his career where, this is 2018, so he's 33. He was at that point in career where his athleticism was still at a relatively high level, but not overwhelming. He wasn't at that point the best athlete in the league, but his mind was that of a chess master, where he just saw the game at a level, saw the game and understood the game at a level where nobody even approached it. That was active playing basketball. and he controlled that game with controlled the pace of the game, with his physicality, his knowledge of the game, and in essence, Boston really never had a chance to win, even though the game was close. Boston never had a chance to really was not going to win that game because they didn't have a player of that ilk that could match him from that standpoint. And that's what you have in Mahomes. That Lamar, no quarterback in the league is there yet as far as Mahomes. Like Mahomes is so by far the best quarterback in the league, the best player in the league. It's really not close. It's not even close. If you're Joe Burrow, you think you have Joe Burrow, you have Josh Allen, you think your quarterback is great. Mahomes is in a different stratosphere. He really is. He's in a different league. He's in his own league, period. Because he's mastered all aspects of the game. A couple of years ago, Kansas City was struggling on offense. And this is when Tyreek Hill was still on the team. We'll talk more about that, the Tyreek Hill trade later on in the podcast. But me and Robert Stapp were talking about whether or not teams were starting to catch up with Kansas City from a standpoint of game planning and forcing Kansas City to go down the field with 10-play drives. And could Mahomes make that transition in terms of being more patient? And could he do what, Tom Brady had mastered over the course of his career with New England? That's, hey, we'll do the 13-play, 80-yard drive, death by 1,000 cuts. Cool. We don't have to score on one play, 70. We don't have to have a 3-play, 85-yard drive. I mean, we want to score big. We want to go, sure, we want to push the ball down the field. We got Tyreek Hill. We got Travis Kelce. We have big play. I mean, we want to go down the field every play if we can. But, we want to go down the field. But let me talk about in terms of New England. We want to go down the field. And this is after they lost Moss. But it got to a point where New England had mastered that offense where they would just, hey, we'll take 8 yards here, 7 yards here. San Francisco used to do it all the time with Joe Montana and company. It wouldn't be about, you saw Jerry Rice make big plays, yards at the catch, but for the most part, they dissected you, to a point to where it was just like, it was demoralizing mentally. And that's where Kansas City is at right now. Kansas City made that transition. That's what Patrick Mahomes doesn't, he will go 85 yards in 12 plays. They had long drives in this game. They had, looking at their drives in this game, especially in the first half, because they did nothing in the second half. Their first drive, 10 plays, 86 yards, 5:45 off the clock. Second drive, 16 plays, 75 yards, 9 minutes off the clock. 9 minutes. Okay. And basically that was it for basically the game. That was that like that. After that, offensively they did, like I said, next to nothing. So they don't care about having long drives. They no longer see this they've completely shifted their way of thinking as far as how they're going about winning football games. Okay, they don't like that changed with the Tyreek Hill trade. That changed with that trade. They made that trade 2 years ago, and it'll be 2 years in March that they made that trade. And that's a trade that we're going to be looking back on and saying that basically changed the course of their franchise. They ended up getting McDuffie from one of those draft picks. He's an all-pro this year, one of the better cornerbacks in the league. And they transitioned towards, being Travis Kelce dominated with their offense as far as, being Travis Kelce dominated. I mean, we know why they did it from a money standpoint. And again, they were playing chess. They were thinking long-term in terms of the players that they were going to have to pay. They're going to pay eventually they're going to pay Chris Jones. They had to pay, of course, Mahomes, paying Kelce. The tackle, all-pro tackle makes a ton of money. And again, people should look around the league. I'm telling you right now, listen, you can't emulate Andy Reid. You can't emulate Patrick Mahomes. But what you can emulate is the fact that putting all this money into a receiver, or putting all this money into a skill position player, outside of quarterback, you better be careful. And from an offensive standpoint, you better be careful about that if you want to have consistently great teams and be consistent making the playoffs year in and year out. Kansas City has mastered that. That money outside Mahomes is spread around. They've developed young talent through the draft, offensively and defensively, especially with their defense. They have one of the youngest defenses in the league, and a bunch of talent on there, and guys that they don't have to pay right now. They won't have to pay until for at least maybe another 2 years. So they are smart, and we'll get into the comparison between them and the Patriots and those two dynasties. But right now, Kansas City is just flat out smarter than everybody. They are. They're absolutely smarter than everybody. Again, that Tyreek Hill trade at the time, and Robert Sapp argued with me down to the T how dead set against it he was. I said, and I will play that audio at the end of the podcast. I'll play that audio from 2022 about, we got to a debate about when Tyreek Hill was traded. This is when it was a wild offseason 2022. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, what have you. That was doing Deshaun Watson had got signed the fully guaranteed contract for Cleveland. We talked about the Tyreek Hill trade in March of 2022. I'll play that for you at the end of the podcast. But I said it in verbatim. I'm like, look, I trust this organization. I don't think this is an emotional move. I don't think that this is a personal move. This was a money move, of course. And I trust they were pivoting. They were shifting. They saw something that we didn't. And they again, look at the team that they are right now. They're not the flashy team. They're not Patrick Mahomes throwing for 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. They're a defensive team that can run the ball. They have Patrick Mahomes, have a great defense. And frankly, more importantly, they know how to win. They know how to win. Like, that's all this. They know in the biggest moments, when plays have to be made, they're going to make the big plays. Whereas Patrick Mahomes, whereas Chris Jones, whereas Buckner, the field goal kicker, making clutch kicks, and during this run, they're going to make the big time play. And Baltimore, frankly, quite frankly, is just not there yet. They're just not there yet, which is fine. But it's not fine, because here's the thing about Baltimore. Now, Patrick, Lamar Jackson is still young, only 27, right? The problem is this: Kansas City is not going anywhere anytime soon. And this win, like, Baltimore had everything set up. You had a great defense. You had a great running game. Your quarterback's going to be winning his second MVP. You had the game at home. Home championship playoff losses are devastating. Home playoff losses are devastating. But you lose a home game in the championship game, that's hard to come back from. It's hard to come back from. The AFC, if you thought the AFC was loaded this year, it's going to be better next year. You know why? Joe Burrow's coming back healthy next year. Deshaun Watson's coming back healthy next year. Jim Harbaugh is now with the Chargers. That changes that franchise's dynamic immediately. They become a problem next year. They will challenge Kansas City for that division without question. We all know the Chargers have always had talent. It was just a matter of getting the right coach that can set that culture straight. We still have Miami and Buffalo. Okay. I gotta see Aaron Rodgers. I gotta see him stay on the field at this stage in his career. He's 40 years old. Gotta see, can he stay healthy? But if he can, they will automatically be better just because, like, with no Zach Wilson, with Zach Wilson not being on the field. That's kind of like addition by subtraction. Then you have Everybody in Indianapolis loves Anthony Richardson, their quarterback. CJ Stroud isn't going anywhere. Houston has draft picks. The AFC is going to be a gauntlet. I mean, it's going to be getting through the AFC next year. Thought it was hard this year. And again, Baltimore is already in the toughest division in football. That division is crazy. How tough that division is. Every team had a winning record this year in that division. So sometimes, I mean, you can miss your shot sometimes and not get another shot again. Ask the Sacramento Kings from 2002. Everybody thought Sacramento, they pushed the Lakers to 7 games. They're the next great team. The Lakers are getting older. Okay, yeah, Lakers were getting older. Kobe and Shaq were about to break up, but Sacramento never even got close. They never even sniffed the conference finals again after that. Never after that. Matter of fact, then, up until last year, had one playoff appearance in 20 plus years, in 20, 3 years? And they had a playoff appearance in 2006, but from their last playoff, 2004 to 2024, they had in 20 years, they had one playoff appearance. So that is a devastating loss for the Ravens. Now, again, the good news is you have a top-flight organization. John Harbaugh's not going anywhere. Lamar Jackson can still get better. That's the good news. There's a lot of positives if you're Baltimore, but this was a bitter pill to swallow because, again, you lost to Kansas City. Again, there's a psychological component to this as well. If we can't beat them now, when will we ever be able to beat them? Because again, this is not a vintage Kansas City Chiefs team. It's not. This wasn't a vintage Kansas. This was not a great Kansas City team. They just know how to win. As far as the second game goes, Detroit blows a 24-7 lead. Now, I don't think Baltimore choked. Detroit was a choke job. You're up 24-7. You are completely controlling the game with your running game. You're playing great. San Francisco, is basically on life support heading into halftime. And then you roughly give up 17 points in the second half. The biggest play of the game was the fumble by the running back. At 24-17, next before you blink, it was 24-24. And Detroit never let that lead stick or made that lead stick. You have to at minimum, you have to be up by 10 points going to the fourth quarter. San Francisco never got an opportunity, unlike Baltimore, to be tight in the game to where they had any real game pressure. Being down 24-7 at the halftime is not game pressure. You're at home and there's a whole half of football left. That's nobody wants to be down by that much, but those comebacks are doable, especially at home. They needed to come out in the third quarter and make that lead stick. Even if you only give up a touchdown and don't score, you go in the fourth quarter up 24-14 or 27-14, you're in great shape. And maybe Purdy gets tight, forces a ball, and throws a pick. 24-24 going to the fourth quarter, it was game, that was it. As far as Dan Campbell, I'll deal with Campbell and then Purdy. Listen, I think Dan Campbell's a very good coach. He clearly has changed that franchise for the good in back-to-back seasons. They have a legit team right now. They have some talented players. There's a toughness to that team that has been missing for years upon years. Mental toughness as well. But the bottom line is you can't cheat yourself as a coach. And in that game, there's a book by Brian Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. Great book, by the way. sometimes you can be your own worst enemy. Sometimes the things that make you successful can also be a downfall. And I think was the case in that game with Dan Campbell. Like 24-27, you're down, you are bleeding and leaking oil at 24-27. The momentum is completely shifted. You have to kick the field goal and stabilize that game. You have to kick the field goal in that situation. It's not even about your aggression or lacking aggression. It's about understanding time and situation. We ask point guards in the NBA, we ask players in the NBA to understand time and situation, and your actions on the court should dictate that with how you go about, approaching each possession, especially in basketball. Well, it's the same thing for coaching in football. I don't care about analytics. I don't care about the computers. You have to have a feel for the game, for what direction the game is going in, the momentum, all the human element that all these computers and analytics have no clue about. You're down by 3. Again, your team right now is on in essence on life support from a momentum standpoint. You have to kick the field goal. It's not even a question. You kick the field goal, you tie the game, you say to them, hey, it's 0-0. We're good. It's 0-0. You go for it. They go down, score a touchdown. Now you're down by 10 points. So in essence, there was a 10-point swing from that standpoint. So I think, again, Campbell, this is only his 3rd year coaching. That has to be a conversation in the offseason from the organization to him. That has to be. We have to have that conversation. Because it has to be a part. It can't be a situation where you're going to this is going to be who you are, because you can get away with that in the regular season against some inferior teams. You can't get away with that in the playoffs, especially on the road, especially against a team that definitely has more talent. Can't do it. Can't do it in playoff games. You're gonna get beat all the time in playoff games. And again, kicking the field goal at that point does not mean you're lacking aggression. It just means you're understanding at this. We've given up a 17-point lead. They've scored 20 straight points. We need these points. Points in the playoffs matter. Field goals in the playoffs matter. They do. There's still points. I know you want to score a touchdown on all your red zone drives. Who doesn't? But the points still matter. And to miss out on points, to go down there to the red zone and not score, or to get on somebody's side of the field or inside the 30 and not score, that is demoralizing to a football team. Period. It's demoralizing. So Campbell, hopefully if you're a Detroit fan, Campbell learns from this and he, stays aggressive. But again, there's a fine line between aggressive and stupid. There is. It's a very fine line, especially as a professional football coach. Not kicking the field goal at down 27-24 was stupid. It was. It's all. I can't put it any other way. And again, that is a devastating loss for Detroit because, listen, they hadn't been there since 1991, right? You're talking 33 years, excuse me, not 43 years, 33 years. Excuse me, 32 years that they hadn't been in a conference championship game. Again, everything was there for them. The NFC is weak. This was not a vintage, like I said, it wasn't a vintage Kansas City team. This wasn't a great San Francisco team. I still believe that San Francisco was that this is the weakest of all their recent teams that have made it to the conference championship under Kyle Shanahan. That defense is not. Their defense right now is playing poorly. Defense is not very good right now. You can move the ball in the defense. Green Bay left points on the board against them. Detroit left points on the board against them and put up 31. Again, I was very confident about both of these picks I probably was even more confident about Detroit, believe it or not, than I even was about Kansas City. I was so down on San Francisco coming off that performance against Green Bay and coming off the way they have been playing down the stretch. Now, in terms of Brock Purdy, again, Brock Purdy has been a very polarizing quarterback over the course, especially over the last month or so. When he was in the MVP conversation and the conversation about how much talent he has versus the other quarterbacks, so on and so on. You got to shut up about Brock Purdy for at least 2 weeks, because when plays had to be made in the Green Bay game, he took his team down the field, scored the game-winning touchdown, got the win in the playoffs. Didn't play well, but played well when he had to. This game, second half, they scored 27 points. They score on every possession in their second half, period. They scored on every possession in the second half. You got to give him credit. Again, statistically, he was okay, but you got to look beyond the numbers. You got to look beyond the numbers. He led his team to 34 points, 27 in the second half. They came back from a 27. Think about this. They came back from a 24-7 deficit. Their defense forced a turnover that changed the game. I give you that. But for the most part, their defense did not play well in that game. Detroit had over 400 yards of offense in that game. They scored 31 points. That wasn't about that game was not about San Francisco's defense whatsoever. It wasn't. So it wasn't like he had to play. He had to make plays. He had to play well for them to win that game. They didn't win in spite of him. Because according to y'all, according to a lot of y'all, basically all he had to do was suit up for the better part of 20 weeks, and they would be in a Super Bowl, and whether or not he played or not, like it didn't matter who was under center. According to a lot of y'all out here with just destroying them. And again, I'm not sitting here, and I've been consistent about Brock Purdy. I'm not sitting up here and saying that this dude is a next level, like putting them in the class of, forget about Mahomes, but even Josh Allen's, I don't think he's even as good as CJ Stroud, to be honest with you. I'll take CJ Stroud over him. But we can't pretend like this, like this dude is a average quarterback or a system quarterback. No, he's better than that. I'm sorry, he is. Now, he has the acid test in 2 weeks. We'll see what happens. But he played great in that second half and helped spark that win. And they don't win that game in the second half without him. Period. Point blank. So y'all gotta get off Brock Purdy for, like I said, for like at least 2 weeks. At least 2 weeks. We'll shift gears a bit. As we, with football coming close to an end, you will notice that we will shift more into the NBA. If you haven't been watching the NBA, shame on you. There's been a lot of great basketball. This has been a great year for the NBA on the court. Not a good year, a great year with where the game is at right now. In the last week, we had Joel Embiid scoring 70. Yeah, Luka scoring 73 points. Karl Anthony Towns and Devin Booker with 62-point performances. A lot of again, there are always going to be some criticism when we start seeing numbers like this, and heard some takes that no defense is being played. It's not good for the game. Here's the bottom line about the scoring. Number one, two of these dudes are transcendent talents. Like Joel Embiid is a Hall of Fame all-time great talent. I'm not saying he's an all-time great player. He has to get past the second round. But as far as talent goes, he is one of the most talented players, one of the most talented big men ever from a talent standpoint. Luka is a transcendent generational talent. Devin Booker is the best two guard in basketball and a guy who will end up in the Hall of Fame someday. Karl Anthony Towns is going to end up, looking at his numbers, the trajectory he's on, he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame someday. So these are four All-NBA, All-Star caliber players. Now, if we're talking about 6 men putting up 70 points, then we can reassess what's going on. But these are not. These are star to superstar players. Like these are top players putting up these points. Three of them are like they're arguably their team's best player. I mean, I can make a case that Booker is Phoenix's best player, Dallas and Philadelphia is no question, and Towns is Minnesota's second best player behind, of course, Anthony Edwards. And I'll pose the question on here: is this the NBA's greatest era? Should put a question mark, but my apologies. Now, again, this is not me being prisoner of the moment. I'm not saying that this is the greatest era in NBA history. I'm just posing the question. And we have to be fair. You have to be just realistic about the evolution of the game. Again, long as these players were staying, long as these guys are playing games, I'm fine with the NBA. My biggest problem with the NBA is when you have guys missing a ton of games, and Embiid missed another Denver game at Denver again this year, which I was annoyed by. But that's almost become a regular annual tradition. But for the most part, the guys this year are playing in a lot of games, as far as comparing the eras, this era is right there with any era that we've ever seen. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, from a skill standpoint, there are players at 7 feet and up who are doing things that we haven't never seen before. Think about Giannis. Think about Embiid. Think about Wembanyama coming into the league and what he's doing. Think about what the skill set of what these players bring to the table right now and what they can do. People complain about the defense. It's not that the defense is bad. It's that the offense is so superior that defensively you don't have a chance. You don't have a chance to guard. Like, great offense beats great defense, especially in the regular season. And by the way, we can't have it both ways, complaining about too many points, because you are looking for something as a fan to keep you engaged for the marathon that is the NBA season that goes from October to June. And before the playoffs, October to April. So what is going to keep you engaged? 120 to 135 to 120 or 81 to 75? Because I remember a time, and it wasn't that long ago as you think it was. We're talking in the mid 2000s, where some of these games were rock fights. Some of these games in the playoff games, you had literally 81, 75 games in the playoffs. You have 78, 75 games in the playoffs. I watched Boston play Cleveland when LeBron was, and I'm talking about LeBron's first in Cleveland. Go back and watch some of those playoff games in 2007, 2006-ish. Those games were hard to watch. And forget about the early 2000s with 03, 04 with the Pistons, and that, some of those games, were played in the 60s. You go back and watch that Pistons, not the entire series, but snippets, or go back and look at some of the scores in that Pistons Pacers playoff series in 2004 and 2005. Some of those games were played in the 60s. I'm not joking. I'm dead ass. The 60s. It would be a half you see higher scores in a half in some of these games versus that way back when. And the NBA had, of course, loosen up the rules with freedom of movement, and that game was not good to watch. Now, I still lean towards the best era of basketball being the 80s, early 90s, when you had Magic, Bird, going into Michael Jordan and Hakeem Olajuwon. That 80 to 93 era. From 80 to 93, 80 to say 95-ish. Had a perfect storm of athleticism and skill. Remember, especially in the 80s, This is before guys were coming out after 1 year or 2 years or even come out of high school frequently. So guys would stay in college. So they came in ready to play with a high level of basketball intelligence, just knowing how to play basketball. The reason why Jordan came in averaging 28 points a game, it wasn't just because he was great. It was because he understood fundamentals. He spent 3 years at North Carolina under Dean Smith. So guys coming into the league, they were ready to play immediately for the most part. That, to me, was the best era because, again, the skill combined with the basketball intelligence and the athleticism as well. Don't let anybody from this era tell you that those guys were not great athletes playing back in the 80s, 90s, early 90s, because that's not true. It's just so much. It's just the fact that they didn't, they knew how to do other things other than dunk, run, and jump. Like they had a skill set as far as fundamentals. They were fundamentally sound, more so because they had more experience coming out of college and what have you. They were coming in at 21, 22 instead of 18, 19. There's a big difference. They came in as men. A lot of these guys they're coming in as boys in terms of physically and mentally, for that matter. But again, this era is very close. I mean, Kevin Durant, look at guys, 7-footer, unguardable, put the ball in for, shoot the ball. Like what you're watching right now is you're watching some of the best basketball that's ever been played in the NBA, period, point blank. And you got to give guys like LeBron, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry credit. All these guys are deep into their careers, 35 and up, 34 and up. LeBron's 39. They're probably three of the top 10 to 12 players in the league at their ages. That wasn't happening 30 or 40 years ago, for the most part. So you got to give them credit for taking care of their bodies and from that standpoint and having that type of longevity. But again, you don't want to go back to rock fights in terms of NBA basketball. You don't, trust me. It wasn't just great defense. No, it was some bad offense, a lack of shooting, along with too many young players coming in not ready to play basketball. Chiefs versus Patriots dynasties. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs have, without question, taken the mantle as the preeminent dynasty, the preeminent franchise in the NFL. It's not in question. It's not goes without saying. No other team, no other franchise is close. They are set up for years to come with Patrick Mahomes only being 28, Andy Reid showing no signs of slowing down and wanting thinking about retirement. I think Andy Reid wants that record wants Don Shula's record. He's close. Everybody talks about Belichick. Well, Andy Reid's not that far away either. He's about 4.5 seasons away from really challenging for that record, maybe 5 seasons. So I don't think Andy Reid doesn't have that in the back of his head, especially if no one is going to hire Bill Belichick, which is a whole nother story. But listen quickly on that. What did I tell you about that? Told you Belichick will go to the team that gives him absolute power. No one, I thought there would be one dummy, but so far, kudos to the NFL teams. No one has been dumb enough to give him absolute power, as they should not. They absolutely should not give him absolute power. So I stand to that. If no one gives him absolute power, we may have saw him coach his last game ever, a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, period, against the Jets. So that's all there is to it. No one, Belichick still wants to run the show, still wants to be the head coach, general manager, personnel, all that. That's still in his head. As far as comparing these two dynasties, very similar. When you look at how they, again, it starts at the top. Great organizations with ownership, but you have legendary coaches, iconic coaches, and that quarterback coach combination that has basically been unstoppable. Andy Reid being one of the best offensive minds of his generation, the best offensive minds of his generation, versus Bill Belichick being one of the great minds, defensive minds of all time. And Brady, Mahomes, they are guys who understand the game, and this is not about the physical. Mahomes probably has more physical talent than Brady, but Brady, of course, has the mental. As long as Mahomes has that as well, but Brady, of course, both of them, these guys being just ultra competitive players who demand perfection out of everybody. Man, perfection out of everybody and hold everybody, raise the level of all their players around them, and don't need superior talent to win football games around them. Don't need superior talent, especially on the opposite end. Brady, Mahomes is going to back-to-back Super Bowls, losing a Hall of Fame wide receiver in Tyreek Hill, who is playing the best football of his career with the Miami Dolphins. Tyreek Hill was challenging for the most part of the season. People thought Tyreek Hill could have had an outside chance at 2,000 yards. So you replay, and Travis Kelce did not play well this season. He was a beast in the conference championship game, but did not, for the most part of the season, did not play particularly well. Was under 1,000 yards for the first time in almost a decade. But these guys raised the level of players around them, period, point blank, in terms of Brady and Mahomes. Kansas City goes 6 straight division titles, 6 straight conference championship appearances, of course, seeking back-to-back titles in their third Super Bowl championship in 5 years, versus New England, which from 2001 to 2019 won 11 straight division titles, went to 8 straight conference championships, which is a record that Kansas City has a very good chance of either tying or eclipsing. Here's the thing that Kansas City has to go going for them. New England, from 2004 to 2014, went 10 years without a Super Bowl. From 2004 to 2013, they won a Super Bowl in 2014 season. So they go 10 years without winning a Super Bowl. I don't see any way, if Mahomes is healthy, that Kansas City goes 10 years without a Super Bowl. Now, if we're talking about legitimately challenging for the 6 championships that New England won, they need to win this one. This would be 3 in 6 years. This would be 3 in 5 years and back to back. Yeah, you realistically want to challenge for New England's supremacy in terms of Super Bowls. You have, and Mahomes, going after Brady, he has to win it this year to have any chance of getting 7 Super Bowls. And it's still an outside chance at that, but he wins it this year. We're talking 3 championships, 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, and 3 Super Bowls before the age of 30, at the age of 28. You would have 3 Super Bowls at the age of 28. So it's on the table. It's without question on the table. And again, they are set up for years to come because they, have managed the salary cap extremely well, and they know how to draft and develop talent. And they can, and like New England, they are not afraid of morphing into something else. They are not afraid of reinventing themselves. They don't get stuck in just, hey, this is the only way we're going to play, or we have this certain style of play. No. Can't do that, especially in the NFL, especially in today's NFL. Can't do that. So these are very more similar dynasties than you think they are. When you really go back and look at them, they both have had superstar wide receivers in Randy Moss and Tyreek Hill. The difference is They Kansas City won a championship with Tyreek Hill. New England didn't with Moss. Hall of Fame, all-world tight ends. Probably, all intents and purposes, the two greatest tight ends of all time in Gronkowski and Kelce. Gronkowski, Kelce and Gronkowski, wherever order you want to put them in. Kelce has broken Jerry Rice's record for touchdowns and receiving yards in a postseason, and that takes him to another level, along with the 9 straight 1,000-yard seasons. Like, I mean, Shannon Sharp believes that he's the GOAT right now, and his postseason, accomplishments is hard to argue. To be frank with you, frankly honest with you. And now you're seeing Kansas City become this defensive stalwart. Again, this defense is not going anywhere anytime soon. I could see them being a top 5, top 10 defense for the next, 3 or 4 or 5 years because of how much young talent they have on that defense. But again, Andy Reid is coming for Bill Belichick and Don Shula in terms of those championships. He's humble, but he is super competitive. He wants those rings. Trust me. Heard all the talk back in Philadelphia, the clock management issues, all that stuff has been cleaned up. Like, Andy Reid is the top coach in the NFL right now, and has been right now for the better part of the last 3 to 4 years. He is the guy right now in the NFL. Like, everybody's chasing him, just like quarterbacks around the league are chasing Patrick Mahomes. And I don't see Spagnuolo going anywhere anytime soon. I don't think Spagnuolo probably won't get another head coaching job. I don't see that probably happening. I haven't heard his name mentioned amongst the head coaching spots. Maybe next year if they have another big season defensively, he'll get some mention if he's interested. But I can see Spagnuolo staying with Andy Reid forever how long, just collecting championships. I can see that. Who won the week? Brock Purdy. Like, it's not, to me, this was pretty easy. Considering how much criticism he had been receiving. Again, his team's down 24-7 at halftime. They scored 27 points in the second half. He leads all their drives. I know one of them was created by a short field with a fumble, but again, they scored, and for the most part, they were scoring touchdowns. He had some big runs he had some big runs as well. 5 carries of 48 yards. And look, he did his job, got his team to the Super Bowl. We'll see what happens in the Super Bowl. He's going to face the acid test in terms of facing all-time great in Patrick Mahomes. And certainly you'd rather have Mahomes than Purdy. That's, of course, it's a mismatch on paper. But he was able to, in the biggest moments when San Francisco the past couple of weeks has needed him to play well, he was able to make the plays. Period. Not a game manager, not a system quarterback, a guy who played like a legitimate franchise-level quarterback. And I want to say, probably made himself $100 million. Unless he just stinks it up in the Super Bowl, which is possible. It's definitely possible. But if he plays decently and they lose a close game, I can't see it. Like, you have to pay him. You're gonna have to pay him if you're San Francisco. Forget about if he wins. We all know that if he wins, even if he doesn't get the MVP, which he probably will, but even if they lose a close game and he plays relatively well, and if he's not the reason why they don't lose, if their defense stinks up the joint like they have been in the playoffs, I don't see a situation where he will not get paid. Like, I just don't see it. I think that this game, conference championship game, clinched the fact that he's going to be probably their long-term quarterback, and they're going to have to pay him a shitload of money. So with that being said, he definitely won the week. I'm not going to give too much on Super Bowl. I'll save that for next week's program. Of course, this is the second time in it's like a full circle Super Bowl for both of these franchises. They met in the 2019 season. So it's been 4 years ago, 2019 season, Kansas City's first Super Bowl win since, going back to the Len Dawson days. Mahomes and Andy Reid's first Super Bowl. It was a game, of course, that, San Francisco could have easily won. They had a double-digit lead going to the fourth quarter. And again, San Francisco fans will never forgive Jimmy Garoppolo because they thought that he probably was the difference between them winning and losing with his performance in that game. Mahomes was not great in that game, by the way. But again, he made the big plays when he had to. A lot of people did not think that he should have been MVP of Super Bowl, MVP of that game. But again, it's hard. You have to almost have like a Ben Roethlisberger type performance not to get the MVP of the Super Bowl. Like it's very hard for a quarterback not to get to the MVP of the Super Bowl. So this is full circle. Again, neither one of these teams are as good anywhere close to what they were in that 2019 season, especially San Francisco. Now, Kansas City, again, Mahomes is better from his mind in terms of like where he's at mentally and the fact that he knows how to win. So, and Kansas City's defense is better. So, Kansas City going into that game is better off, even though that they're an underdog by 2.5, which is basically a pick 'em. I don't see how I don't see how you have Kansas City an underdog, to be honest with you. I think at best it should be a pick 'em pick. Like they should not be an underdog in this game, period. Not with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. I'm sorry. And Kyle, I have respect for Kyle Shanahan, but he's no Andy Reid. We know the quarterback mismatch, and we know how well. Like, if you're looking at the defense, Kansas City's defense by far is the better defense in terms of how they're playing. Like, that's not even close. So they have the quarterback advantage, the coaching advantage, and the defense advantage, and they're still not favored. So I don't see how Kansas City is not favored in this game. I don't understand it. I really don't. Considering how tough the AFC was in comparison to the AFC, Kansas City went through Miami, Buffalo, and at Baltimore. Think about that for a second. Buffalo was playing some of the best football at the end of the season. Baltimore was the best team probably in football for the most part, for the majority of the season, especially the latter part. And Miami was a double-digit winning team. And that was their first round game. So I don't understand why. From the standpoint of it's going to get some bettors, people betting that line. I expect that line is 2.5 now. It will drop to about 1.5 before the game starts. I promise you, that line is going to drop. And money's going to go towards Kansas City. I promise you. But I'll give my overall thoughts and my deep dive that game next week. Real thoughts, and then I'll let you go. The rap battle did we even ask for this? Did we even ask for Meg Thee Stallion versus Nicki Minaj? I don't remember asking for this. I don't. This is not going to make, trust me, it's not going to make anybody forget about Nas versus Jay-Z. It won't. Meg Thee Stallion comes out with Hiss on Friday. Eviscerates everybody, including Nicki Minaj, Drake, Parsons Fontaine, Tory Lanez, amongst others. And Nicki responds with this just off the hinge, this is just one of the worst responses I've ever seen in terms of like in any rap battle. She goes on Twitter and the social media and just would not, just kept talking and blah. It was just blah 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 blah. Just all basically the better part of 48 hours. Talks about Meg's dead mother. Talks about just everything. Threatens to come out with a number of songs. And then you hear the Bigfoot song called Bigfoot, which is clearly, we know it's clearly geared towards Megan. And something happens that I've never seen in any rap battle in my whole entire life, that I've never seen or even heard of. Even rap battles that I wasn't even around for. or wasn't even cognizant of following rap because I was too young. Like, she comes out with the song, but the song is horrible. It's poorly produced. It was rushed, but everything she said on Twitter and social media, that was the song. I've never seen a rapper give, in essence, a transcript of what they're going to say and then release the diss track. I've never seen that in my life. I've never, ever seen that. Please, has anybody seen or heard that? Please tell me who did this or who's. Please tell me who, if you ever have seen or heard this, because I've never seen any shit like that in my life. Anyway, it was horrible. It was rushed. It was just like, yo, Nicki, just go sit down somewhere, please. And you would think, so Meg Thee Stallion is 28, right? Nicki is 41. Meg goes back to the lab, and I'm not making Hiss out to be Ether or Takeover or The Bridge Is Over by KRS-One. It's not a classic. It's okay. It's decent, but it's not like, again, I'm not a Meg Thee Stallion fan. Like, I'm not a fan of either one of these rappers, to be honest with you. But Megan clearly took her time, and this, if you're gonna come at somebody, this is how you come at somebody. Nicki Minaj at 41 was kind of like the petulant child, in a sense that it was a bunch of whining and a bunch of complaining and it was a bunch of talking. It was like somebody saying, I would equate to somebody, getting punched in the face, or saying, not so much getting punched in the face, but saying, I'm about to, just do it already. And now she released the song, but the song was the song was horrible. If you think Jay-Z's Super Ugly was bad, this was worse. Remember Jay-Z Super Ugly after Nas destroyed him on Ether? He came out with Super Ugly. This was worse. This makes that look like a classic. This is one of the worst comeback songs I've ever seen in hip hop history. It literally is that bad. It's up there. It's top five horrible comeback songs off a rap battle. One of the worst retorts that you will ever hear. Again, it was just the production, everything. And then Nicki, on top of it, Nicki's talking for like the last minute. She was talking for the last minute of the song, which made it even that much worse. And now threatens to come out with that she has 5 other songs lined up if Megan, breathes the wrong way. What have you. This battle just needs to end, like, here and now. Like, I'm not even here for it. I'm not. It's not even entertaining. That's how bad the music is. And when the music is not good, it's like, again, it's like, why do I have to hear this? We didn't need this. Honestly, we did not need this battle at all. We didn't ask. No one asked for this. No one. So I'm sure, unfortunately, this won't be the last of this. I hope it is, but it will continue. Certainly, I think it, without question, will continue. That's going to wrap it up in this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. Again, subscribe, like, comment. You can even dislike. Listen, your opinion is your opinion. I respect it regardless. If you don't like it, tell me why you don't like it. That's all. But I'm going to put the clip from 2022, myself and Robert sat discussing the Tyreek Hill trade from Kansas City and Miami. So I will put that at the end of the podcast. Have a great rest of your evening. So long. Tyreek Hill traded to the Miami Dolphins. Hill is just 28. He's been in the league for a while. He's only 28 in the prime of his career. Kansas City gets 5 picks. They get a first in 2022, a second in 2022, a second in 2022. Also, they get a 4th in 2022, and also a 4th in 2023, and a 6th in 2023. So Hill immediately signs a extension to stay with Miami now. I know you saw the number $120 million. This is what the contract really is. It's 3 years, 72 million, 52 and a half guaranteed. That inflatable number is similar to what you saw originally with Devontae Adams when they said it was $141 million in regard in 140 miles. Just that's an inflated number. They will those fourth and fifth years. The most important parts of the contract is the beginning of any contract. So you gotta when these contracts come out, you gotta give them a little time to kind of like marinate. Because it's not the first number is not the real number. It's always the guaranteed money. So still he's well compensated. 3 years, 72 million, 52 and a half guaranteed. He is now a Miami Dolphin. When you heard about this trade, because I have a ton on this trade, but when you heard about this trade happening and you got all the information in terms of the compensation, what were your initial thoughts?
Again, you can just continue to play this on loop from week to week. Shocked, stunned, didn't see this happening, confused as to why this is happening. It is very challenging for me to analyze any of the things that are happening in an isolation way because I don't understand what I'm looking at right now because it is so counter to the NFL I have watched my entire life. So, and my football watching and everything has been, a lot of it has been post free agency. So this is, most of it has been free agency in the NFL. So this is counter to everything that I've been led to believe. Even when you're recounting those numbers and how the numbers are breaking down, I hear you. Yeah, something else. Anyways, I guess my first reaction was shocked and stunned, and then the next reaction was, what is going on? And then I'm like, am I seeing something feels amiss? Am I missing something? So I started searching the young boy reporters to try to figure out, like, is there some new math money thing that I'm just not seeing? And maybe it's because I'm old, but I'm not getting any information there. So I'm unclear as to why this had to happen now. And just off the face of it, it looks like Miami got better in the now and Kansas City got worse in the now. But if I were to just isolate this to football as I know it, then it looks like Kansas City is playing the future play. Kind of doing a little hybrid Patriot-esque, get rid of them early rather than later, and get as much as possible. This the Patriots they really do. Get as much as possible as they can. I mean, the haul that they got for him is 100% fair.
Oh, it's more than fair.
Yeah.
I'm like they. So here's the thing. So they've been with this core now for about 5 years. You've had the Mahomes 4 years or so, because this was Mahomes' fourth year. So you had Mahomes, Kelsey, Hill. You can throw in Chris Jones as well in that in terms of that core players, and it's produced a lot of success. One Super Bowl, a couple Super Bowl appearances, 4 AFC Championship appearances. But we talked all year long about what teams had done to catch Kansas City as far as in terms of game planning.
Right.
And we were wondering what was the move for Kansas City, not only from a strategic standpoint on the field, but possibly what could be something what is their chess move?
Yeah.
What was Kansas City chess move? We were wondering throughout this course of this offseason about what is Kansas City going to do to combat this, nuclear sort of the arms race that's going on in the AFC West and the AFC in general. I think with this deal, you got your answer. To me, I trust Kansas City from an organizational standpoint in terms of how they develop and draft talent, especially offensive talent. So it's like, okay, we'll pay you, but ultimately we still have to. We would like to improve our defense. We would like to. There are other parts of our team that we would like to work on, and I think it's gotten to a point. I talked to you earlier about this. Is I don't think that. I think again, I could be certainly proven wrong, but I think that it's got to a point with receivers. Now, by the way, I'm preface this and say, I don't think that we're seeing a devaluing of the wide receiver to the level of the.
No, because
I don't think we're seeing that
money. This ain't devaluing nothing.
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing that. But I will say is we've seen teams who've paid their quarterback, their franchise quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. You had Roethlisberger, you had Drew Brees, who have given their quarterbacks massive amounts of money, and rightfully so. Russell Wilson with Seattle, and they haven't won a Super Bowl since they paid their quarterbacks. So there's something to be said about that. So I think that Kansas City's like, hey, we're not going to pay you twice. We've given you one nice big contract. We trust our process as far as drafting. And if we have a team that's willing to give us this amount of capital, it's almost a deal that is almost too good to be true for Kansas City getting this amount of capital. You talk about having 2 first-round picks this year, 2 second-round picks this year, and also 2 fourth-round picks. So, they have 3 extra picks in the first 4 rounds of this draft. And looking at their history, and I'll go through it as far as some of the offensive players that they've picked late in these rounds. Kareem Hunt was a 3rd-round pick, 86 pick. Tyreek Hill was a 5th-round pick, in 2016. Travis Kelce was a 3rd-round pick. Nicole Hartman, 2nd-round pick. So there's a history offensively of them being able to pick guys out, develop them, coach them up, and we see what it's turned into. I trust that organization. I trust Andy Reid. I trust whoever their scouts. I trust I trust what direction they're going into. I don't think this was an emotional decision. I don't think this was in contrary to how I felt about Devontae Adams, and we'll talk about that later. I don't think this was a ego decision. I simply think that this was just a business decision, and that this was just too much capital to turn down, to be honest with you. So I feel like Kansas City is making their move. You cannot gauge the Kansas City team right now based off. You can't gauge them right now because the draft hasn't taken place and free agency is not done. So those of you out there are going to say, well, they're not as good without Tyreek Hill as they are right now. Yes, in this moment, yes, in this exact moment, but you have to wait till this plays out with the draft picks and also with the rest of free agency. They can move, they can make a trade. With the capital they have, they could trade for DK Metcalf. They have that kind of capital. So you have to wait to see where they're at as this process plays along. But look at their history, look at their draft history, look who we're dealing with here in terms of how they do business. I have to give them the benefit from the doubt from that standpoint. And I think that this is. I really think, and I thought about this on my way home on the train. I was like, I really think that we're seeing a chess move, maybe a change in philosophy as well in terms of how they're going to approach the game offensively. I really do from that standpoint. So, what are your thoughts about that?
My thoughts are we might have wanted to talk about this ahead of time. Otherwise, this is great if you like opposing opinions. I could not disagree with everything you said. Literally everything you said more. I 100% disagree with every single thing you said. I hate this move. I think it's short-sighted. I think it's stupid. You do not trade away a once in a lifetime receiver. I've watched him eviscerate my team and other teams. He is a singular talent. It is ridiculous. If any of those things were accurate, we would have heard those things before. The Davante Adams and Tyreek Hill trade do not make sense on any level, mainly because none of those things were said before. They're only said after to justify something that is unjustifiable with the current information that we have. You do not let a 6-time Pro Bowl singular talent in the prime of his career go on a Super Bowl contender. No, Surreal, what are we doing here? No, I'm not trying to legitimize this or anything. They're not thinking no steps ahead, none of that. They are hoping and praying to God this works out, because all that first, second, fourth, sixth in 2000 and who cares are theoretical exercises. They may or may not. We know the draft itself is 50-50 at best. That is a singular talent. You just let walk through that door. You don't do it.